Good afternoon. So, welcome to week 2 of emotion regulation and emotional intelligence. I got some great feedback from you guys with goal setting and naming your emotions. So, some of you said that it was really eye-opening for you to name your emotions and put a name to it. And so, I hope that you'll utilize that tool that I sent to you. To continue to use that and name your emotions, because a lot of times we go, well, I'm angry, but there's a lot more underneath that emotion of anger than just being angry. So just saying, well, I'm angry doesn't always help us, when really we need to get underneath that and say, well, I'm angry, but really I feel rejected. Really, I'm sad because this happened and it made me feel rejected, and now I'm taking it out in anger. Does that make sense? So those are important questions to ask as you dig a little bit deeper into those emotions and where they come from. So if you've never looked up, and I can send this to you guys, if you've never looked up the iceberg of emotions, it's a really good picture of the emotions. And basically what it has is, most of the time, our frustration or emotion will come out in anger because it's the most natural emotion that we have. But what's underneath all of the iceberg is anger, but what's underneath all of it is all the other different emotions. And that is really what you need to look at, and that's what you really need to target and understand that that the Titanic didn't sink because it hit an iceberg. The Titanic sank because of what was underneath the iceberg. So that's what we need to understand. That's what we need to be able to dig deep into. That's what we need to be willing to shed and be willing to be vulnerable and see those things in us so that we can truly be our best self. So week 2, we're going to go into looking at some cognitive distortions, as well as how do we, if I can find my paper here, hold on. How do we, hold on just a second. I'm finding my notes here. How do we combat negative thoughts? What do we do with those negative thoughts? Where do they come from? And all of those things. So that is an important thing to look at. So we're going to look at cognitive distortions, and we're going to look at countering negative thoughts. And all of that really goes hand in hand. But the first thing I want to look at is cognitive distortion. So there's really 15 in the psychology world, in the counseling world, 15 faulty ways of thinking that most of us could fall prey to. A lot of them, and some of us may fall prey to 1 or 2 or 3 of them, but recognizing them is the key. So I'm going to be sending you this document this week, and part of your homework is going to be looking over this document, studying the different faulty cognitive ways of thinking, and target yourself on which categories you fall into. I'm not going to go over all 15 of them. Some of them mirror each other a little bit. I'm going to go over some that are pretty prominent, and then I'm going to ask you to really look at these very, very closely this week and ask yourself, which of these do I really fall prey to when it comes to how I perceive things. So the first one is called filtering. So this is a faulty way of thinking, and what that means is it's focusing solely on the negative and ignoring all the positive. So a lot of people that struggle with anxiety or depression fall into this faulty way of thinking. They filter everything through a negative way, a negative mindset. And that can be very dangerous if you're only seeing the negative and you refuse to see the positive. So that's called filtering. The second thing is overgeneralization. So this is assuming all experiences and people are the same based on one negative experience. So that means that if, let's give an example, you were cheated on in a dating relationship or in a marriage, then you take that experience and you then you then overgeneralize everyone and every relationship that you're in, and that doesn't even have to be romantic relationships. That can be friendships. So you think that everybody's going to betray you because you were betrayed that one time, or you're going to be betrayed again because of that. So you filter or you overgeneralize your whole life because of one experience. The third one is catastrophizing. So this is actually, I see this a lot. This is assuming the worst case scenario, magnifying the negative and minimizing the positive. So this is different than filtering, because this is taking any situation you find yourself in, whether big or small, and making it big. So as my parents used to say, you're making a mountain out of a molehill. That's what catastrophizing is. You're making something small something very, very, very big. And maybe that's because maybe if you're in a relationship, maybe it's a buildup of things, and then one small, tiny thing happens and it just blows everything out of the water. But you are taking that one small thing and you're making it bigger than what it is. Another one is blaming, pointing to others when looking for a cause of any negative event instead of looking at yourself. Now, this happens often because, the natural tendency of the human nature is not to say, where did I go wrong? Or where do I need to fix something? But most often, there's something in us that needs to be worked on. We're all works in progress. It's a journey. You'll hear me say that over and over and over again. But so often we are looking to fix other people and not asking ourselves, well, what could I work on to make myself better? And then maybe if they see that I'm doing my due diligence on improving myself, then they'll start to ask themselves the same questions. Maybe it's somebody you're in your marriage, friendship, any type of relationship. So instead of pointing the finger all the time and it's you, it's being willing to look inwardly and ask yourself some hard personal questions. Okay, so that is blaming. Another one that I see often is emotional reasoning. Here's what emotional reasoning is, and this is why we're working on emotion regulation. Because so often we think, well, if I feel it, then it's true. Now, this can be in a circumstance or a situation that you find yourself in. It can be in a relationship that you find yourself in. It can be a way that you think about yourself. It can be the perception that you have of yourself, whether outward appearance or inwardly. It can go all over the place. This can. But what we want to begin to do when it comes to this emotional reasoning is to look at what is rational versus irrational. And we're going to do that a little bit more next week in our lesson next week. We're gonna really look at what is rational and what is irrational when it comes to our thinking and when it comes to our belief system. Because if we don't stop and take the time to ask ourselves, is this rational or is this irrational, and work through that, then we will fall prey to this very thing, emotional reasoning, if believing that if I feel it, then it must be true. Our feelings can't always be trusted, because if we were all emotionally healthy all the time, then maybe, but the reality is we're not. We're emotionally up and down based on the day, the hour, the weather, our circumstances, the way this person treated me, the way that person treated me, or whatever. So it's important to step back and ask ourselves, is this line of thinking rational or is it irrational? And we'll talk about some ways that you can move forward in that. Some very tangible things that you can do to investigate the rational versus the irrational. And we'll talk about that. Actually, we'll talk about it a little bit more this week, but we'll put some tangible ways into practice starting next week for that. So those are just a few of these faulty ways of thinking. And you're going to get a sheet that looks like this. You can't really read it, but it has all of the different cognitive distortions. That's what we call it. It's a faulty way of thinking. So what we want to do is we want to change the way we think so that we change the way that we believe, and therefore we change our behavior ultimately. And that means we are acting out of a more healthy mindset. We're acting out of healthier emotional intelligence, a higher emotional intelligence, and all of those things. So we don't fall prey as often to these faulty ways of thinking. So you're going to get that sheet. And then next week, we're going to get another sheet as a follow-up of this, but we'll talk about that later. Okay? So what is it? What are some tangible things that we can do to counter negative thoughts? So I'm going to give you 4 today, and then I'm also going to send you this sheet that I'm going over with you in this video, and I want you to really take consideration the 4th one, and I'll go over that with you in just a second. So what are some things that we can do to counter our negative thoughts? Because if we're honest, if our emotional intelligence is low, if our emotion regulation ability is low, then we're going to fall prey to negative thoughts before we choose to believe positive thoughts. That's just the reality. So what can we do? The first thing that we can do is we can name it and tame it. So last week, I made you name it. I made you name the emotion that you were struggling with. This week, you're going to name any negative thought that you're struggling with. So you're going to add to that in your journaling. So not just the negative emotions that you're having, but any negative thoughts that you're having towards another person, towards yourself, towards a situation, towards your job, anything. I want you to name it. I want you to name it, because if we don't name it, then we can't reel it in and tame that negative thought. But how do you tame a negative thought? Part of taming it is giving a title to it. Is giving a title to that negative thought and saying, you know what, I have no use for you, and then literally mentally letting it go. Letting it go and then move on. That sounds super easy, but if you will repetitively do that with your negative thoughts, it may come 15 times a day. One negative thought that you have maybe about yourself. And if you will do that every single time that thought comes into your mind, if you will name it, you will say, I have no use for you, and then you let it go. That is called being mindful. It's called being mindful of your thoughts and then mindfully letting it go, saying, I have no use for you, and letting that thought go. The second thing that we can do is what's called come to your senses. So mentally step away from the negative thought. So if we've named it, We've let it go. I want you to physically walk away from that negative thought. So putting some of these physical, tangible things into action, you may feel silly at first, but really nobody knows what you're doing except yourself. So, but if you will step away from that negative thought, and then not only that, but replace it with a positive thought. Okay? So, for example, my negative thought may be, gosh, I need to lose 15 more pounds. I'm so disgusted with myself. I name it. That's a negative thought about myself. I let it go. And then I go, but I am fearfully and wonderfully made. And I am a beautiful creation. Boom, right there. You name it, you let it go, and you replace it with a positive thought. And if you're by yourself, if you're in your room, if you're at your house, you say that out loud. You verbalize it. I am fearfully and wonderfully made, and I'm a beautiful creation. Okay? The third thing is regular mindful practice. So this is really important. And when I first was doing my internship with counseling, we would do a lot of mindfulness and dialectical behavioral therapy. And I thought, this is a little weird. I had never done a lot of that before. But I'm telling you, it is super helpful. Mindful practice can be as simple as sitting in your chair and literally just feeling the floor beneath your feet, the chair beneath your legs and your booty, the chair on your back, closing your eyes and just letting every thought go for 15, 20 seconds. And just breathing, inhaling and exhaling. If you struggle with anxiety, that is going to be huge for you. And I don't mean just waiting to do those things when you're in the heat of an anxiety attack. I mean, practice that 5, 6, 7, 10 times a day for 15, 20 seconds at a time. Inhale, exhale, lay down on the floor, lay down on your bed, feel the bed beneath your body, and just be mindful and present in that moment and let everything go. You would be surprised at how much that relaxes your mind in order to make better emotional decisions. You would be super surprised. Now, there are other things that you can do. You can download mindfulness applications on your phone where it will walk you through mindfulness exercises. One of my mindfulness exercises is reading scripture and journaling. That is my mindfulness exercise. I do it every morning. If I'm stressed out, I'll come in my office and I will do it again in the afternoons. That is a stress relief for me to just read my scripture, read my verses, journal about my day. If it's been a stressful day, then I can journal. I can take that page out. I can rip it up and I can go, you know what? There's no place for this in my life right now. And I can let it go. I can physically let it go that way. I've counseled a lot of people to do that, to write down whatever the stressful thought is, whatever the negative thought is, and then literally rip it out of your journal, tear it up, and throw it away as a physical representation of, I have no use for this. It's a great mindfulness exercise. Okay. Number 4 is asking helpful questions for unhealthy thoughts. So I'm going to give you the questions that you can ask yourself. You can come up with some more questions. These are just some that I I came up with and I found, but you can come up with some more if you feel that they are more helpful or guide you in a more helpful way. But I thought that these were great. One is this thought in any way useful or helpful to my growth? That is a very revealing question. So if you're having negative thoughts or negative emotions, you stop, you do all of these things, or you can just stop, come right down to these questions and go, is this thought in any way helpful to my growth? If the answer is no, then you can do the other things that we talked about. Let it go. Replace the thought if it is not helpful to your growth. Do not give entertainment to a thought that is not helpful to your growth. Do not give entertainment to a thought that is not helpful to your growth, okay? If you don't remember anything that I've said in this video, remember that. Do not give entertainment to a thought or an emotion that is not helpful to your growth. The second thing you can ask yourself is it true? Because a lot of times, and we'll talk, like I said, we'll talk more about this next week, but a lot of times we can step back out of ourselves and we can ask ourselves and see if we can perceive that situation from another perspective other than our own and ask ourselves, is this even true? Is this the reality of the situation? And answer it truthfully. Another question you can ask yourself is this just an old story that my mind is playing out of habit? So we form habits in our mind, okay? That's where our beliefs come from, and then that's where our behavior stems from. We form habits. And so sometimes those thoughts that we have, it's not that we want to have those thoughts, it's the habitual thought pattern in our mind. I'm fat, I'm ugly, I'm not worth anything, they can go on and on and on. It's a negative thought pattern that has become a habit and therefore has become your belief system. If you want that to change, if you want the belief system to change, then you have to do the work in order to change it. And what I'm giving you is things to put into practice that you can change and reroute those negative thoughts to have positive thoughts and a better lifestyle for yourself. So you ask yourself, are these just habits? Are these just old stories that I'm believing out of habit more so than actually believing that they're true? Another one is this thought helpful or is it my mind babbling on? Sometimes we allow our mind to race in all different directions. That's when you have to get control of your mind, okay? You have to reel it in. You have to have some type of control over your thoughts, and you have to be diligent about replacing those thoughts, stopping those thoughts before they become a snowball effect, stopping the thought and replacing the thought. Stopping the thought, replacing the thought. You have to be diligent about that in order for that to become your new habit. Do these thoughts cause me joy or sadness? And you've got to be the distinguisher of that. You have to decide, are these thoughts worth holding on to? Are these beliefs worth holding on to? Are they bringing me joy in my life? And if they're not, you have to take hold of that and choose to change them. So then you can start asking yourselves questions in the opposite direction. What is the truth? What is my deepest truth? What do I know to be true, regardless of whether that's my continual thought pattern as of today? So decide what you want to believe about yourself. Decide what you want to believe about your circumstances. Decide what you want to believe about your life. And then put that down and make that your truth. What do I really want to feel or create for myself? How can I move towards that? That's another great one. Who would I be without these negative thoughts? Now that may be a very revealing question. And once you figure out what it is what you would look like without all the negativity, then that's going to reveal to you the person that you truly want to be. Do you want to live in freedom? Do you want to live without shackles and chains of negativity and fear and anxiety? If you do, ask yourself what does that Angie look like without the shackles of fear? What does the Angie look like without the shackles of anxiety? What does the Angie look like without the shackles of negative emotions and feelings about who she is and what she's called to do? What does that look like? And decide what you want that person to look like. What new story or thought can I focus on? Now, these are going to be questions that you can ask yourself, and I'm going to send you this to keep with you this week. This is going to feel like a lot, like you're doing a lot, but I want you, if you don't feel like you can really put all of these things into place at one time, then take it one step at a time. Take these 4 steps and do one of them at a time. And then once you get through the end of this week or next week or the next few weeks, then you've put these things into practice when it comes to those negative emotions that you have fallen prey to for so long, or these negative thoughts that you've fallen prey to for so long. And then in the next couple of weeks, we're going to write the story of what our life looks like with the negative emotions and the highs and lows of emotions, and then we're gonna write the story of what it would look like without them. That new story that you want to write for yourself, and then we're gonna have fun with that. But that's gonna be next week. And this is going to be your homework for this week, is just wrapping your brain around these thoughts, wrapping your brain around these faulty ways of thinking, and using these to reveal some things in yourself, and use them to counter those negative thoughts that you may be having, or the negative emotions that you may be dealing with. All right. So that is week 2. That's a lot. I really want you to dive into this. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. You're more than welcome to reach out to me through email. And I'm pretty sure on each of my emails, my phone number is on there as well. Pop me a text. I can't always answer my phone. But if you want to pop me a text and set up a time to get on the phone, then I can do that a little bit better. So I hope you guys have an awesome week. Choose today that this is going to be a day and a week of moving forward, not backwards, and that looks different for everybody. So just choose to move forward, not backwards. If we're doing that, then we're making headway. I'll talk to you guys soon.